Hello everyone, and welcome to Pearson's Speaking About Pedagogy and Practice in English Featured Speaker Series. I'm Jennifer Edwards with the marketing team, and I'm glad you could join us today. I hope you find the ideas presented by our speaker Tim Taylor valuable for your classroom teaching. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. For those of you who are new to the webinar format, I have a few quick things to point out. If you're calling in by phone, please know that this is not a toll-free number. It's for that reason that we recommend you use your mic and speakers in the control bar so you can listen toll-free through your computer. You may also notice that your line has been muted. This is to minimize background noise or any interruptions to the presentation. We encourage you to ask questions by typing in the text box marked Questions on the right-hand side of your screen in the webinar dashboard. If your dashboard seems to have disappeared, hit the orange arrow and it will open back up. You can send us your questions at any point, and when the formal presentation is over, we'll be using the remaining time to pose as many of your questions as possible to Tim. Any questions we don't get to will be forwarded along with your email address to our speaker directly, so any questions will be answered one way or another. Please include your name and school at the beginning of your question. We would also like to invite you to keep up with this conversation on Twitter. To do that, you can follow us at Pearson North AM using hashtag PearsonLearn. Today's session is entitled Teaching Reading and Writing in the Age of Acceleration and is being presented by Tim Taylor. Tim is an associate professor of English and director of composition at Eastern Illinois University. There he teaches basic writing, college composition, professional writing, and rhetorical theory and pedagogy. Tim has also co-authored our new text for developmental writing called Ideas and Aims for College Writing. All right, Tim, it's time to turn it over to you. Are you ready to get started?
Sure.
Alrighty.
Well, thanks for, okay, let me make sure my screen is up. Thanks for coming to the webinar today. I just wanted to just introduce myself a little bit more. Originally, Linda was going to be on this call also, but she has a straight Tuesday-Thursday schedule, so she was not able to make it. But she's an assistant professor of English at St. Louis Community College at Merrimack, and as we go along today, if you have any questions at all, please pose them, and I'll try to get them at the end of the session and later on if needed. So what I really wanted to talk about today is just how we can connect with students better through various tools in our courses and our textbooks, but really the state of developmental reading and writing courses, as you probably know, is in a state of flux. We have, the traditional developmental reading, developmental writing courses. We have studio courses, stretch programs, which my university has a basic writing stretch program. I designed about 5 years ago, but now we're thinking about moving it to either an accelerated learning course, co-rec course, or something different because it's not stretching the right way. Also, as you probably know, there are integrated reading writing courses. So there's a lot of change going on in basic writing and developmental reading. We have a number of outside pressures. A number of states, the state legislatures, are mandating certain reforms with developmental reading and writing. Whether they have the credibility to really do that effectively is up to you to decide. But we also have pressure. I know on my campus, there's tremendous emphasis on retention because of enrollment. I mean, nationally, there just aren't as many college students as there used to be. It's a national trend, so there's an extreme focus on retention and graduation rates. And in addition, with Common Core standards around a number of states, we'll see how that plays out. But we also have pressures within our classrooms. As you can see, I've kind of created a list of statements and questions students might ask or say, or they may just have in their mind. I mean, a number of these I've heard. I've always been a bad writer is a common refrain that I see in my basic writing courses I teach. Or I just don't like writing. And then there's the idea, too, that I do my best writing under pressure, which is, is their rationalization for procrastination, unfortunately. And also just getting students to do the reading and do it effectively, I think, is a large challenge also. Because of that, Linda and I, we wrote our book, Ideas and Aims, and we wanted to create a tool. I mean, a tool for reading and writing. So what you can see here is, where ideas comes into the book. It's a mnemonic device that we use both for reading and writing to guide students and really just slow them down. And the core is, a good piece of writing should generate interest and keep it. It should have details, specific and concrete, that really work with the audience. It should do a good deal of explanation, using examples, explaining what you mean, clarifying ideas. Really should connect with the audience. And it should have a sense of style, not just grammar. Grammar is important, obviously. We want documents and writing projects that are sound with grammar and mechanics and so on. But also just kind of showing students also that there's, rhetorical grammar. There are reasons why you use a complex sentence versus a compound sentence. So really just focusing on that. And we've used this tool for a number of years, teaching our textbook. And it's worked really well because you can use it for reading and writing. So what I want to do, this is the first time I think Pearson might have used the polling feature. So what we're going to do here, I want you to read and analyze and then vote for what I'm going to give you. On 3 separate slides are sample housing advertisements, and these were, the audience for these housing advertisements. They're selling a house in a retirement community. So the audience would be older, retirees looking for a good place to live. So using the ideas template, the tool, what I would like you to do is really think about which one is best for that audience. As you see here, how does it capture the interest of the readers? Does it use solid details? What facts and examples really explain and persuade? Also, just with the word choice and other choices, does it connect with the audience? And does it use, good word choice, sentence variety, level of formality? So to reiterate again, I'll show one housing advertisement. You can read silently. I'll read silently too to kind of gauge how much time we have. I'll move to the next one so that we get 3 ads, A, B, and C. And then here, once we're done reading all of them, Stephen will put up a poll, and you'll all vote, and I'll talk as you're voting. So here we go. Here is the housing ad A. So just read it, think about the ideas template, details, explanation, audience, interest, style, and consider which is the strongest ad. So here's ad A. And if you're done reading, maybe kind of skim and scan back to certain aspects of the ad here, and then we'll move on here in a little bit. All right, here's ad B. Okay, I'll let you look back at it here. Okay, we'll move on to Realtor C, add C. Okay, I'll give you a little bit of time to look back at that ad. Okay, and now, one thing we have students do when we do this exercise is really just either write or discuss who do you think should get the sale. So if Stephen can pull up the poll now, that would be great to see, which one do you think is the strongest, and we might be able to discuss why you think that A, B, or C is the strongest later on. But what this is it's a step for just using that analytical reading tool, ideas, to analyze text. And what we'll see once the poll, is done here, is that typically when we use this in the classroom, we move students to writing the ad. So it's very much along the lines of using genre awareness. This is a real genre here. I mean, when Linda put together these ads, she did a little, a good bit of research into what makes an effective advertising copy for houses. So she really looked into, the specific word choices, the things you want to say, you don't want to say, and so on. But what you'll see once the polling is done is that we then move students we give them a layout of a house, give them a totally different situation. They're no longer pitching the ad to retired people. It's now a young family and, a good school district and so on. I mean, I'll just read it for you. We would have students write, and this is one of the assignments in our textbook. It says, a real estate firm has recently hired you as an advertising copywriter. Your first assignment is to write a one-paragraph ad for this home, which will be featured in a high-end real estate magazine. This home is in a new, upscale neighborhood of single-family homes in a good school district, basically what everyone's looking for. Your target audience is young families. Keep ideas in mind as you write this paragraph. And like, we used in analyzing the text, we then lead students to use the ideas template to generate text, just using a heuristic. I tell students the fancy term for what you're doing is a heuristic, a brainstorming device, to really make them think through their choices, their rhetorical choices and their stylistic choices. So they got to think, how will I capture my reader's attention? What are they going to say to really capture the attention of young families? What concrete details will bring drama and clarity to the ad? So what details are really important? Next, what facts and examples will persuade? And it's informative, but it's also persuasive. So what can really move readers to want to check out the home? What details do readers need? What are single, young families really wanting to hear? What's going to impress them? And just looking at sentence variety too. So that's something. Just based on genre analysis and genre awareness, we show them the genre and then have them create the genre based on the ideas template. So it really shows that connection between reading, using ideas, and then using ideas for writing. So I think key for us is really just slowing students down. I recently read, just finish it, it's a book called Words on Screen, The State of Reading in a Digital World. And one of the findings that Naomi Guerin has in there is that when students read hard copy text, not on the screen, they read more carefully. So I think that's one of the big challenges we have as writing instructors and reading instructors, is just slowing them down, because often, with more and more digital reading, they're skimming and scanning, power browsing, and so on. So it's something really you just have to have some kind of tool. You can use our ideas template or create your own. It doesn't really matter, but just something to really slow them down in their reading and in their writing. Next, I want to really share, I'm basically distilling a number of different researchers about how to become a successful writer and reader. And they primarily come from two people. One is Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Mindset. And actually, people have used that book in basic writing courses, because it really shows that students can grow if they have the right attitude and the right belief. And also, Angela Duckworth has done a number of studies about what she calls grit, persistence, working hard, diligence. So it's something I'm going to share here. And this is not just something I share with my colleagues. I share it with my students. I mean, the first week of class, I go over these concepts, because often, as you saw previously on the slide of common things students say, they often come sort of as beat-up writers. I mean, they might not have good experiences with writing or reading. So I think it's really important to provide this information to really persuade students about how they can change for the better. So Dweck has shown that, mindset is very important, as you can see from the quotation there. Experience, training, and personal effort take them the rest of the way. I mean, often I think students come in with the mindset that writers are born, like they pop out of the womb, and either this person's going to be a good writer or this person isn't. And that's just wrong. It doesn't work that way. It's personal effort, work ethic, really thinking that you can change. Also, as she relates here, this growth mindset is based on that you can change, that you can cultivate. So I think really inspiring students to really think that they can change, whether they've had good or bad experiences with reading or writing in the past. So, and also stretching yourself and sticking to it, kind of getting to persistence there, even when things aren't going as well as they could be. I mean, it really, the growth mindset carries them forward, that they can work hard and do well as long as they're, putting in a good effort. And as she says here, you have a choice. Mindsets are just that. I mean, they're powerful beliefs. So I think really to get students off on the right foot early in the semester is really just sharing this information that, accomplished writers, they have to work hard at it. It just doesn't come, to them naturally. And as it says here, commitment and effort. It goes back to, my dad barely graduated from high school, and then went into the Navy. So, the only advice I really got from him about college was just work hard. So, it really comes down to a blue-collar work ethic and being coachable, I think. So here's Duckworth's research. She's done a number of studies. She did one where she found that grit or persistence, self-discipline, will trump IQ. A really interesting study, because I think often students and even adults think that if you have a high IQ, you're going to do great if you do well on those tests. And she found that that's not the case. You can have a great ACT score and do incredibly poorly. I'm sure we can think of examples from our own college experience. For example, I had a guy 2 doors down in my dorm room my freshman year. He was getting paid to go to college because in Missouri, they had the Missouri Bright flight, and he had like a 35 on his ACT, valedictorian and so on. But he just didn't apply himself. He flunked out. So I often share that, that example, that just because you do well on these tests, I mean, his strength of character wasn't there. He didn't want to, he'd rather go to his fraternity house and do various things and sleep in. So it's a choice. Also, I mean, her research and others' research about motivation, particularly Edward Decky's research has been, I mean, it's going out to a wider audience now through Paul Tuff's book, How Children Succeed. So it's really interesting, and here's just something, the character traits that from his looking at a mass of research really that predicts life satisfaction and high achievement. So grit, going back to Duckworth's research, self-control. And if you're familiar with Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment, the famous one where those who showed self-control to resist eating the marshmallow did better in life later on. I mean, really interesting. Social intelligence, I mean, basically something that my kids were told in kindergarten, work well with others. Gratitude, optimism, curiosity. I think these are all things, I'm not exactly clear on zest, but I think just being passionate about what you want to do and maybe find some intrinsic motivation about whatever task you're given in college and so on. Also, another thing I share with students that first week, it was produced by the Council of Writing Program Administrators, the National Writing Project, and NCTE, is the framework for success for post-secondary writing. You can just download it, and I have students read this, and it really gives them, we discuss it, it gives them a good perspective on what you need to think about and do to be successful in writing. So curiosity, openness. I think openness in a way relates to coachability, just being able to take criticism, whether it's negative or positive, and learning from it, whether it's from peer review or the instructor. Also engagement. I mean, as we know, I mean, there are some times where we're not as engaged as we want to be with a, I mean, I can remember a number of papers I wasn't engaged about, but I had to find a way to get invested. And just really looking at creativity, I mean, looking at different approaches. I think our culture, to a degree, has almost a misguided idea about creativity. I mean, engineers can be creative. Scientists can. It's just not like fiction or poetry or, that type of deal. I mean, creative problem solving is one way to think about it. And to get back to the whole grit factor again, persistence. Are they ability to really work at short and long-term goals? And also, I mean, one of our chapters in our textbook, the first chapter is about, here are the codes of college. So one of the codes, I think, is just personal responsibility and being responsible for one's own actions, which, from my experience teaching basic writing classes, that can be a hurdle. Also, flexibility, to really think about different rhetorical situations, different tasks that you're given and how you have to be flexible in your thinking and what you're doing. And finally, metacognition, which I think is really key, just thinking about one's own thinking. I mean, I'm doing it today actually in a grad class. They're turning in their philosophy of teaching writing, and I pose questions. What do you think are the strengths of the assignment? What do you want me to focus on? What do you think are the weaknesses? Other questions I might ask would be, what did you learn about writing by doing this assignment? And then I go for the transfer question. What did you learn about writing in this writing project that you want to transfer to other writing projects? So it's really just asking those questions make students see that those questions are important. So making them think about transfer of learning is really, really important in whatever writing project you're providing. So keys, I think, for writing and critical thinking, the growth mindset, I think, is key. Like I said, I share that with students, I think, day 2. Hard work, discipline, basically what my dad, Verge, told me about. And he was just, I mean, he wasn't a college graduate. He was a meat cutter, you know, sort of, and then got laid off and was a businessman. And they have to care. I mean, I think this is really, I mean, it's such a no-brainer. But, I mean, if you've read Patrick Sullivan's article, What If Comp Courses Emphasize Motivation? It was written in Teaching English in the 2-Year College probably 3 or 4 years ago. He really just, I mean, makes readers think about, we really have to think about motivation in our courses. So what I'm going to provide, you know, some strategies here to really tap into motivation, I hope. This is from Michael Bunn, who wrote an article. You can see it on the work cited. But how we use model text is really important. So like I showed you with the housing ad, you know, a short writing assignment, you provide model text and then have them produce the text that they're reading. So I think that's key. You know, people have been doing it for years, I mean decades, since ancient Greece actually. But what his study shows, I mean, he has empirical evidence that it works and how it works. And so I would really recommend you checking out that article, which was published in 3C's, College Communication, Composition and Communication. So how designing a course in which reading and writing assignments build on one another. So like an argument-based course, you know, typical a second semester comp course, you have them read arguments or produce arguments. I mean, so similar to that, or just use the readings to launch into exploration of a topic or an idea. So how they reinforce and scaffold upon one another is key. As I've kind of shown you, just using a reading writing tool in a consistent way, I think, is really, really important. I mean, you can use ideas or whatever you come up with. And I just slow them down to really take the time and work through the reading and use it as a tool to generate writing as a heuristic. Key for me is tying their writing and reading to their professional, personal, and civic lives. One of my favorite assignments, for example, and it's in our textbook, it's called a career profile paper. I use it fairly early on during the semester, and I usually limit it to having them interview someone in a profession they're interested in, and just kind of getting some background about what you need to do to be a nurse or a police officer or a civil engineer or whatever profession they're thinking about. But what's key to that assignment, what's really important, is that I ask students to ask those interviewees about the writing they do and the reading they do. So what that shows to them is you're going to have to write if you're a police officer or a nurse or whatever profession you go into, because often, I think all too often, students come into our classes thinking, well, I'm going to be an engineer, I don't need to write. And they need to be disabused of that notion. So assignments like that really show them. I think maybe one of the faults of our professions is that we tell them that writing is important, but we're not showing them. So assignments and activities like that can really tap into internal motivation if they're really excited about being a PR person. Why not have them ask questions about the type of writing a PR person is going to have to do? And also the personal and civic lives, I mean, where they really delve into their communities, you know, just doing like a proposal or a persuasive paper about what's going on in their neighborhood, their state, their campus, and really trying to do something about it so you can show students that writing has a real-world impact. Like in our instructor's manual, for example, we have an example of a civic proposal written by Jessica Esquivel, one of my former students, where she wrote a civic proposal, not in an essay format. It's got headings, and it's formatted like a professional document. And then there's also a cover letter that goes along with it. So they could actually send their proposal or argument to someone in power. So it really taps into you can do something with your writing. Also, to reiterate, practice metacognition. So really thinking about what did I learn in this writing assignment that I can transfer to other assignments, and thinking about genre knowledge too. I just want to leave you with the other strategies to consider that I've used both, to get students reading and to read more carefully. I attended a session at NAID last month where one of the findings of this person, she was a reading teacher, and one of the things that she did was simply use a reader's guide based on the recommendations in John Bean's book, Engaging Ideas, where it gives them a reader's guide, questions, and it really just had her students read more effectively. One of the really interesting findings that she had was one piece of feedback that students really liked. On each reading guide, she tells them to put all your devices away, and students told her that that was one of the most valuable pieces of advice. Put your phone down, put your tablet down, and focus. So just even cues like that are really interesting. You could also use the KWL tool, which is used in a lot of educational settings. They do a reading, and then they write about or talk about what they knew about the topic, what they want to learn more about, and what they learned by reading that article or essay. So it's a nice little template to use. I often use write, pair, share. So say they did a reading. Often you don't want them coming in cold to discuss a reading. So I pose a question or two, have them write in response to that, get their ideas on paper, pair with someone, so talk with someone else, collaborate, and then they present what their answers and ideas are in response to those questions. It's a simple way to do it. Write 5 minutes, pair 5 minutes, share 10. So it fits into lesson plans really easily. Also, even in a basic writing class or a developmental reading class, bring their own discussion questions. Have students bring in discussion questions that are important to them, even if it's, I don't understand this. So I think just leading students to ask the right questions. But you have to, early on kind of talk about how you don't want yes or no questions. And then a presenter-respondent format, similar to write, pair, share. You can provide a number of different questions, put them in groups or individually. They present what they're saying, and then, you can make it into sort of a game. So say I presented my findings on a set of questions. I then have to pick 2 respondents to respond back to what I said. The reason I do this is because too often I think, when you assign questions or something for students to do and then they have to present, some students can zone out. So the respondent portion of the format really makes students responsible and listening to what their colleagues are saying. Also, this is risky at times, but you can assign people to be discussion leaders. You want to do this probably later on in the course when you've kind of modeled the way you want discussion and analytical reading to happen. And also, there are all kinds of in-class writing activities that can be appropriate. Just to end here, this the slide before the works cited. Some web searches of note. There's there's a number of videos out there. Carol Dweck giving presentations on mindset, so that could be a nice adjunct to when you talk about it in the class. You can easily find there are a number of grit scale tests out there, and I've had students take the grit scale test and kind of compare where they are, but also, I mean, you have to have that belief and change. And also, there's a RSA Animate on Drive by Daniel Pink that will really present, so the differences between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. So here's the works cited. I mean, but I'm open now to any questions you might have at all.
Tim, quickly before we move to questions, if we could go back to your real estate ads, I wanted to give you the results from the polling. 83% of our attendees chose B as the most appropriate ad, and 17% chose C. So I don't know if you want to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. That's typically how it pans out. I mean, A usually, probably what a lot of people noticed with A, and I'll click back to it, is that I don't think it's written for a younger audience. I mean, a lot of people note all the exclamation points. Quick, I mean, to me, starting out with quick is a bad move. But also, it tends to, there's the freshly painted, clean ranch. There's a lot of focus on how the house has been updated, and when Linda made these, she found that one of the recommendations is that you don't want to call attention to renovation, because that calls into question the integrity of the house. Now, if we go to C, I personally like this one, but I think that's because I'm kind of a cheapskate. So, you have that affordable price that ties in, but there are some recommendations from realtors that you don't want to put in that the seller is motivated, because that could be questionable. But Realtor B tends to garner the most votes, and people, there's good details. I think it has a decent style. I think there could be a bit more sentence variety, but it does, focus on what's inside the house pretty well, along with sort of the community itself. So you guys are right on base with, B being, probably the strongest. And when we've used this in class, it's worked really well, and then it feeds into now right, one of our assignments. So, and there's typically a good discussion about, the differences between B and C and the strengths and weaknesses. So, good job. But any questions at all?
All right. If any attendees would like to, please feel free to enter your questions into the question box. We're open to taking any of those at this point. Tim, is there anything else you want to share about using the ideas template while we wait for some questions to come in?
Oh, I really use it, like I said, for the analytical reading, like in our textbook. After readings, often we break it down by the ideas template. Here are questions related to interest. Here are questions related to audience. But I find it works really well for brainstorming. Getting them inventing and doing some pre-writing. So just using questions based on the ideas, like, what details do I need to provide? What examples and explanation do I need to do? Really just, it caters to the type of questions a writer needs to use. Kind of just creating a rhetorical mindset for students and what they need to think about. So I heartily recommend it for a brainstorming tool, because I think, well, students need to get pre-writing as soon as possible, and it provides a heuristic to get them going.
Excellent. One of the other things that I like is using the ideas template as an application for models. You mentioned using the reading models as being very important for students in order to be able to effectively write their papers. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you might use that in class as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've based peer review sheets on ideas. We even have in the instructor's manual, we have rubrics based on the ideas template, so you can really follow through that way if you really want to, or if you're, I don't usually, at least for individual students, for individual classes, I should say, I don't use a rubric, but I do provide criteria for each assignment, so I tap into, you need to hold the interest of the reader. So it can be part of the language of the classroom, and it can carry over into how you're responding to student writing to make it valuable, certainly.
Excellent. And we have not got any questions, so your presentation must have been very clear and effective, so thank you, Tim. One of the things that I wanted to let everybody know about is we will put Tim's slides and any handouts that he might want to share, as well as his work cited, will be available on our Pedagogy and Practice website later this week. And Tim, if you want to provide a list of further readings as well, I know you mentioned quite a few books and research that we want to make available for attendees. That would be great. I want to encourage everybody to stay on the line for our next presentation at the noon hour, and we will be back here in about 15 minutes to start our noon session with Brenna Dugan. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye.